Hey yo, welcome to my channel, and just gonna talk about what else opening day in baseball, basically, or more so for the past couple of days, 3 days basically of opening baseball, and so for everything that's happened. Not more of the scores that our teams recap, but more of a lot of the changes that Major League Baseball tried to introduce with some of the baseball rules. One of them, of course, was the defensive shift being eliminated, as well as the pitch clock being in place, as well as the other factor of increasing the size of the bases. Increasing the size of the bases, I think that's a good thing, honestly. It doesn't hurt as much. I mean, you're putting a little bit more emphasis for the defensive for the teams to be a little bit more defensive, and like as far as putting a little bit more onto the catcher as well too, because like I think nowadays we're missing catchers being big defensive catchers. They're looking for more power, more hitter, more power hitting catcher versus a more well-rounded catcher. And I kind of miss those days. Like, I mean, you got Pudge Rodriguez, of course, so like he's your typical uh, catcher that you want and are looking for essentially. And I think everyone's trying to get, as well as Real Muto and such, basically. So that's, I think everyone's looking for that, and that's what you strive to find basically for those type of catches, as well as good second baseman and good shortstop basically at that point as well too. For if this shit steals occur from first to second, you try to find something, as well as the fact of like putting a little bit of a defensive plays in motion basically at that point, as well as the fact that you'll probably see more and more hit and runs back in. Basically, it's more of a case where it comes back to Moneyball basically, where instead of like trying to steal and trying to do hit and runs, you're like, you know what, just get the up on base percentage to as high as you can. But now with the fact that the sizes are expanded a little bit more, now you got more a type of hit and run type of aspect, as well as more steals, which I kind of miss in those days. And it does add an element of to the game itself as well too. Now, the one thing I am in favor of it, that of course of this, outside of that, is also the pitch clock. It's definitely shown that the pitch clock has moved the game a little bit more faster. It's great to the point where like now the pitchers as well as the batters can play a little bit of mind games, but not too much, to the point where like it takes up almost 40 minutes for an inning or something like that in that nature. So in this case, it moves it off a little bit to the point where now we've seen it where Stroman basically didn't he was the first one to basically be caught with the clock count, as well as I forgot the batter basically, essentially being the first one basically where he didn't look up 2 seconds to look up to realize, okay, if within those 2 seconds of the pitcher ready to pitch, if a batter doesn't look at the pitcher, you get a strikeout, or a strike, not strikeout, but strikeout, a strike. So sorry, I'm just a little it's a little bit uneasy today, basically. More so because of the fact that I'm a little tired, more than anything else, and I also had a huge meal. So, but coming back to it, the pitch clock I think is actually I think it's very beneficial. And honestly, if you're a pitcher, you can still utilize it to your advantage. Same as a batter as well, too. You could utilize it to your advantage as well, too. To be quite honest, and this is something that's been introduced in baseball or minor league baseball. So some of the baseball players have to be aware of this, and should be aware of this at this point as well. Now, the one thing that I'm not in favor of, and I thought it was stupid, and I think it's a stupid idea, and I think they should remove this, is the defensive shift. I think it's more of a case where like they're trying to eliminating the defensive shift brings the ball back to the hitters, into the hitter's court, basically, to the point where, honestly, you won't see players or hitters that are that great, that doesn't know how to adapt to changes, and they're basically long ball hitters and such. Honestly, I think, and that was the reason why you see some of these players that prior to these defensive shifts, they were doing really well, but once the defensive shift came on board or started being utilized more, these players didn't know how to adapt, and then they started to realize, like their worth was starting to fall down, and their on base percentage was going as far down as well too, because one of the things is they didn't know how to adapt. And that's one of the classic example. The classic example is Ryan Howard. He was a great hitter, or a great home run hitter at least. But once they realized, put the defensive shift on him, he sucked. He was only purely a home run hitter at that point. And like the thing is, like you didn't have to hit the home run. Like you didn't have to pitch to him to the point where like make a mistake. All you have to do is pitch towards the outside a little bit. That he basically pulls the ball towards the shift at that point. So that's one of the things where I thought for sure. I think it was a mistake, and it's not a case of being a baseball purist. I think it's more of a case where this is something where like managers were able to like mess with the minds with the players or the hitters, and also the aspect of like you're playing defensive routes basically, like you're shifting people in the outfield as well too, and the fact that now they're eliminating it, it's such a stupid idiotic idea honestly. If a batter can't hit and doesn't know how to adapt, then it's on them. That means then it's up to the team for them to like get rid of him. Like, why is he worth $80 million if he doesn't know how to hit? Honestly, it's like a case of, let's say Ted Williams. Ted Williams knew how to adapt, and he was really good at hitting. Clemente, great hitter, a Hall of Famer of course too, but he knew how to adapt and he knew where to hit. Basically, these guys basically knew where to hit into the gap basically at that point. And some of these players don't know how to do that nowadays, and that's why I realized, you know what. Major League Baseball is trying to shift towards everything towards the batter and be more offensive. Honestly, defense also is really good at that point. Let's not forget, with the defense, you got a 1-0 score, you have the more likelihood of getting more no-hitters, more perfect games. I mean, we're starting to see that more and more nowadays because of the fact of the defensive shift, and that was great. But I think the case of the pitch clock actually brings back something what was lost 20, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, where games would move very quickly. Players, hitters realize, I can just mess around with the pitcher and mess around with their routine and such. Same thing with pitchers, they can mess with the batter's routine and such, to the point of let's speed the game as quickly as possible. So that's one of the things where I kind of miss that aspect, and I think the pitch clock really does provide that the game move along at that point. But again, like I said, with the aspect of the aspect of the enlarging the bases, will allow for more steals, more anything else. And I think you'll get people more of like what Ricky Henderson was, or the actually I don't know anyone that had over 30 steals in the past 5 years. There might be some, I haven't looked up the stats and such, but like honestly, you don't see any players having more than 30 steals. I mean, you won't see people with the 30-30 club, 40-40 club, which would be great. But again, like I said, the defensive shift, I think that's a stupid move. I think that's more of a case where like if the batter is not good enough to adapt to those changes, and honestly, if you got the whole left field basically, all of third base practically open, all the hitter has to do is learn how to bunt that way and then get it, and then you got a free hit. That's the other lost art form, is bunting as well too. A lot of these hitters don't know how to bunt really well. That's another lost art form I think that we should bring. I mean, if the shift was not there, if the shift was there, a lot of batters will learn how to bunt at that point, I think, and then you'll see pitchers learning. Okay, you know what? I got to be careful because this guy can bunt. If we do this shift, you can you basically, if you can learn how to hit towards the the gap, then the shift won't happen for you. But more often than not, some of these hitters are too lazy to adapt and learn and learn a new skill, sadly. But yeah, with that, and then of course there's the whole thing where if it's a 10th inning, you got the ghost runner. I mean, I'm not a fan of that either, to be honest with you, because I think of course they don't want innings, games to go beyond 12 to 14 innings, where it's 5 to 6 hours. But quite honestly, some of those games are great because when they go into 23 innings, or at least 16 innings, 17 innings, or even 23 innings, those are awesome. Those are great. It's to the point where now managers have to start utilizing their noggin at that point to understand, to realize, all right, how long can I put this player in play basically, or do we just take a loss and just come back later on? But more often than not, it's more of them managing their resources of their players basically to make sure they have the players available for the following games essentially. But with that, I think, but let's put it this way. At least it's opening day. Let's see how everything goes along the ways. As a Mets fan, of course, Verlander gets injured, so it's the Mets. What do you expect? It's the curse, basically. Mets are cursed for whatever reason it may be. But at the same time, I will say this is Senga coming on today Sunday, for April 2nd. I'm pretty impressed so far. It's only the first game, of course. It's only one game. Let's see how well he does with other hitters. A team that's loaded with hitters, like the Philadelphia Phillies, or the San Diego Padres, or Dodgers for that matter. But more of the Phillies and the Padres more than anything else. Let's see how Senga does against those lineups. But outside of that, again, it's baseball. Baseball is back. I'm happy. So like now it's one of those things where you have the rare cases of three sports again playing back in it again, as well as Major League Soccer. So it'll be interesting to see like how the New York Mets do. Of course, the Yankees, being the Yankees, they're doing decent enough now at this point. Where like Aaron Judge has left where he ended last year. He started off basically at this point. He's starting off where he ended off last year, basically like hitting home runs. So honestly, I'm kind of curious. And the thing is like Aaron Judge, classic example. Shift was on for him. You can't put a shift because the guy knows where to hit, basically. So that's one of the things where this guy knows how to adapt. So that's one of the things. That's why I'm hoping after this year they get rid of that rule of eliminating the defensive shift so that it can come back. Because then it brings back the lost art of bunting as well too. But with that, I'll leave it at that. Let me know your thoughts. What do you guys think about these rule changes, and what did you think about like opening day? Are you guys excited for this season? Do you think your team's going to go well or far, or make it the playoffs at least and such? Let me know your thoughts on that. Again, please leave your feedbacks or comments in the comment section. Let me know, and and I do read my comments and I do respond to them as if you've seen some of my comments or some of the comments and you've seen my responses to some of them. Also, at the same time, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. The more the merrier. And if you do like my video, please like it. If you don't, you're welcome to dislike it as well too, honestly. But with that, I'll leave it at that. Unfiltered, unedited, and unrehearsed. Until next time.